Have you ever seen a truck where the driver was sitting almost right on top of the engine? Old American Cabovers had that flat front, rugged, unforgettable look. They were built to work around length laws, pull heavy loads, and still carry a kind of road presence that most modern trucks just cannot match. Some became legends. Others almost disappeared completely. And today they are true treasures for collectors and classic truck enthusiasts. Ready to take a look at some of the rarest and most legendary American Cabover trucks of all time? Then stay with me until the end, because the #1 truck on this list is so rare that even many die-hard classic truck fans have never seen one running in real life. Kenworth K100E. Starting off the list is the Kenworth K100E, one of the most recognizable American cabovers ever built by Kenworth, and especially remembered for its 1970s and 1980s versions. It came from a time when a cabover engine layout made a huge difference because it kept the overall tractor and trailer combination shorter while allowing fleets to run longer trailers under the length regulations of the era. The K100E could be ordered with several engines, including Cummins inline 6-cylinder engines, such as the famous 855 cubic inch unit, around 14 liters, producing anywhere from 300 to more than 400 horsepower. Some trucks also came with Detroit diesel V8 engines, including the 8V92, a 12.1-liter engine. In stronger setups, torque could climb past 1,150 pound-feet, while a loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run could take well over 40 seconds. Top speed was usually somewhere around 65 to 75 miles per hour, depending on gearing. The transmission was manual, often an Eaton Fuller, with 9, 10, 13, or even 15 speeds, with ratios made for highway work. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with rear suspension using either leaf springs or an air ride setup. It had everything people love about an old cabover: a tall cab, flat nose, wide windshield, vertical exhaust stacks, and the driver sitting almost over the engine, feeling the rumble, the vibration, and that old diesel smell that defined an entire generation. Used for interstate hauling, refrigerated trailers, dry vans, and long-distance freight, the K100E became a symbol of the cabover era before conventional long-nosed trucks took over American highways again. It is a favorite at classic truck shows, especially when restored with period-correct paint, polished wheels, and a preserved interior. And if this Kenworth already brought back plenty of road-going nostalgia, the next truck carries an even more classic signature on American highways. 1978 Peterbilt 352 Cabover. The 1978 Peterbilt 352 Cabover is one of those trucks that does not have to try hard to get attention. Built by Peterbilt in the United States, it belongs to a family that started back in the 1950s and became one of the most respected cabover lines on the road. By the late 1970s, it was the kind of truck that combined heavy-duty work, big fleet presence, and the pride of an owner-operator. In its best-known configurations, it could run a Cummins inline 6-cylinder engine with 855 cubic inches, about 14 liters, making somewhere between 290 and 400 horsepower. Some units were also equipped with Detroit diesel V8 engines, such as the 8V71, a 9.3-liter engine. Depending on the setup, torque could go beyond 1,000 pound-feet. Loaded acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour could take more than 40 seconds, and top speed usually sat around 65 to 72 miles per hour. The transmission was manual, usually an Eaton Fuller 10, 13, or 15 speed, paired with a 6x4 drivetrain and rear suspension on leaf springs or air ride, depending on the build. The cab was straight, tall, and instantly recognizable, with round headlights, a chrome bumper, and a look that seemed ready to cross the whole country without asking permission. When a Detroit diesel was working underneath that cab, the sound was sharp, metallic, and unforgettable for anyone who lived through that era. Widely used on long routes, dry vans, general freight, and interstate hauling, the Peterbilt 352 became one of the most loved cabovers among collectors. Today, when one shows up restored with two-tone paint, polished wheels, and tall exhaust stacks, it does not feel like just an old truck. It feels like a rolling memory from the golden age of the American highway. But the next truck on the list has a nickname just as unusual as its shape, and that is exactly what made it such a special rarity. GMC Cracker Box. The GMC Cracker Box is one of those trucks that became famous before the engine was even started. Built by General Motors Truck and Coach in the United States, mainly from 1959 to 1968, it earned its nickname because of its short, square, simple cab that looked almost like a box. At a time when weight, overall length, and practicality were serious concerns in trucking, this GMC delivered a direct solution. A lot of usefulness in a compact package. In its best-known versions, it could be equipped with Detroit diesel inline six-cylinder engines, such as the 671, a 7.0-liter engine, or Detroit diesel V8 engines, like the 8V71, a 9.3-liter engine. Power varied quite a bit, usually ranging from around 238 to more than 300 horsepower, with torque that could move past 750 pound-feet. Acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour was slow, especially when loaded, often taking more than 50 seconds. Top speed was usually around 60 to 68 miles per hour. The transmission was usually manual, with multi-speed gearboxes made for heavy-duty use, and the most common drivetrain was 6x4. Rear suspension could use leaf springs or air ride, depending on the application. The Cracker Box looked small compared with other highway tractors, but it had a presence all its own. A completely flat front, narrow cab, high step, and a loud engine sitting right below the driver, creating a raw, hot, vibration-filled driving experience. It was commonly used for regional hauling, heavy deliveries, shorter trailers, and urban operations where the compact cab helped with maneuvering. Over the years, many were simply worked hard and scrapped, which is why finding a preserved Cracker Box today is something special. If you are enjoying this ride through the Cabovers that shaped an era, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell, because it helps us keep bringing these forgotten road machines back into the spotlight. And get ready, because the next truck leaves the big fleet image behind and brings in the unusual charm of a brand that not everyone remembers for heavy cabover trucks. Dodge L1000 Cabover Truck. The Dodge L1000 Cabover truck is one of the most interesting surprises on this list, because many people remember Dodge for muscle cars and classic pickups, but forget that the brand also had a serious presence in the heavy truck world. Built in the United States, mainly during the 1960s, the L1000 came from a time when Dodge was trying to compete with giants like Kenworth, Peterbilt, International, and GMC. The mechanical setup varied depending on the application, but many of these trucks used Cummins inline six-cylinder engines, including large displacement options around 743 or 855 cubic inches, making somewhere between 220 and more than 300 horsepower. Torque could climb above 750 pound-feet, enough to handle heavy loads on regional and interstate routes. A loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run could take more than 50 seconds, and top speed usually stayed around 55 to 65 miles per hour. The transmission was normally manual, with multiple gears and shorter ratios to help the truck get moving under weight. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with tough leaf spring suspension that was simple to maintain. Visually, the L1000 had a tall cab, flat front, split windshield on some versions, and a less polished appearance than a Peterbilt or Kenworth. But that is exactly where its charm comes from. It looked industrial, honest, and ready to work without complaining. It was used in heavy hauling, regional operations, industrial freight, and jobs where durability mattered more than luxury. Since Dodge never dominated this market the way some other American brands did, many L1000 trucks disappeared over time, making the survivors rare today. And if this Dodge already feels like something outside the usual script, the next truck takes us even further back, to a rounded nose Kenworth that became a respected prize among collectors. 1955 Bull-nose Kenworth. The 1955 Bull-nose Kenworth looks like it rolled straight out of an old truck stop photograph, with the smell of oil, thick steel, and hard work all around it. Built by Kenworth in the United States, it became known as the Bull-nose because of its rounded forward cab design, which looked very different from the more squared-off Cabovers that would come later. This style helped reduce overall length without giving up the strength needed for long hauls. Mechanically, It could be equipped with Cummins inline six-cylinder engines, including diesel options used in heavy trucks of the period, usually making somewhere between 180 and more than 250 horsepower. Some configurations could also use large displacement gasoline engines, depending on the job and the buyer. Torque was strong at low engine speeds for the standards of the 1950s. A loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run was very slow, often taking more than a minute, and top speed usually stayed around 50 to 60 miles per hour. The transmission was manual, with multiple gears, and in many cases, auxiliary gearboxes to help the driver climb grades with a load. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with simple, tough, and stiff leaf spring suspension. Visually, the Bull-nose had an almost hand-built presence. Rounded cab, split windshield, integrated fenders, and a high stance that made the truck look shorter in length but huge in personality. It was used for highway hauling, logging work, regional routes, and heavy-duty service at a time when comfort was a luxury and toughness was a requirement. A preserved Bull-nose is extremely desirable because it represents an important transition between older conventional cab trucks and the more modern Cabovers that followed. From here on, the list gets even heavier because the next GMC became famous for taking the sound and strength of Detroit diesel to another level. GMC Cannonball Detroit Diesel. The GMC Cannonball Detroit Diesel enters this list with a strong name and the sound of old-school trucking. Built by GMC in the United States, it became closely associated with the 1950s and 1960s when Cabovers were gaining ground on long routes and heavy-duty operations. The Cannonball nickname matched its purpose perfectly, a Cabover engine truck with a compact overall length, built to keep freight moving for mile after mile. The main highlight was its Detroit diesel power, including inline six-cylinder engines such as the 671, a 7.0-liter unit, and in some stronger configurations, Detroit diesel V8 engines. Power could range from around 200 to more than 300 horsepower, with strong torque at low and mid-range engine speeds. A loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run could easily take more than 50 seconds, and top speed was usually around 55 to 65 miles per hour, depending on the rear axle ratio and the type of load. The transmission was manual, with multiple gears and ratios designed to keep the engine in the right operating range. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with firm and durable leaf spring suspension. The look was classic old GMC, short cab, flat front, rounded lines, and a rugged stance. But what really made it memorable was the sound of that Detroit diesel working hard, with a high-pitched, almost singing exhaust note that many truckers could recognize before they even saw the truck. It was used for highway hauling, general freight, industrial work, and heavy-duty service where mechanical simplicity was a real advantage. Many of these trucks worked until they were completely worn out and then disappeared, which is why finding a well-preserved Cannonball today is rare and special. And if this GMC already made that Detroit diesel sing, the next truck comes from a brand that helped shape the image of American trucks before many of the bigger names became legends. Diamond T Cabover. The Diamond T Cabover carries a different kind of elegance, almost like a truck built with pride in every detail. Built by the Diamond T Motor Car Company in the United States, it was especially important from the 1930s through the 1950s, when the brand was known for combining heavy-duty strength with better-than-average styling and finish. It was not just a work tool. For many companies, it was a symbol of status on the road. Diamond T Cabover versions could be equipped with gasoline inline six-cylinder engines, common in heavy trucks of that period, with displacement depending on year and application. In many models, power was usually in the range of 100 to 200 horsepower. That sounds modest today, but it was respectable for the time. Torque came in low. Loaded acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour could easily take more than a minute, and top speed usually stayed around 45 to 55 miles per hour. The transmission was manual, often with fewer gears than a modern truck, but with short ratios to help with heavy-duty work. Drivetrain layouts varied, though larger models often used a 6x4 setup with leaf spring suspension. The visual presence was the real show. Forward cab, split windshield, chrome grille on some versions, and a front end that seemed to mix a working truck with a display piece. These trucks were used for regional hauling, heavy deliveries, industrial operations, and special-purpose bodies, depending on how they were built. Since Diamond T eventually disappeared after mergers and changes in the truck market, its cabovers became highly valued rarities. Seeing one restored today is like opening a window into a more elegant chapter of American trucking, and the next truck raises the comfort level, bringing in a cabover with a trim name that was built to impress both the driver and the company owner. International Brougham Eagle Cabover. The International Brougham Eagle Cabover represents a time when American cabover trucks started gaining more comfort, better trim, and stronger personality. Built by International Harvester in the United States, it became especially known through the 1970s and 1980s, when the TranStar line and Eagle versions attracted drivers who wanted a strong truck with a more refined interior. In the most desirable configurations, it could use a Cummins inline 6-cylinder engine, such as the 855 cubic inch unit, around 14 liters, making roughly 350 to more than 400 horsepower. Some versions also use Detroit diesel V8 engines, depending on the order. Torque could climb past 1,100 pound-feet. Loaded acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour was usually over 40 seconds, and top speed normally sat around 65 to 75 miles per hour. The transmission was manual, usually an Eaton Fuller 10, 13 or 15 speed, made for long hauls and heavy loads. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with rear suspension on leaf springs or air ride. Visually, it had everything a classic truck fan likes: tall cab, flat front, wide grille, bold paint, plenty of chrome, and an interior that, in Brougham and Eagle versions, could offer nicer trim, better seats, and details that mattered when a driver spent weeks away from home. It was widely used in interstate hauling, dry vans, refrigerated trailers, and long-distance freight. The Eagle name helped give it a special presence, because it was not just another Fleet International. It had more style and emotional appeal. Today, a preserved Brougham Eagle cabover stands out because it combines muscle, rarity, and that simple road-going luxury from an older era. But the next two trucks are even harder to find, and the one coming up now carries such an uncommon configuration that it feels like a forgotten piece of a factory catalog. Kenworth TCF-521 CBE. The Kenworth TCF-521 CBE is one of those names that even many classic truck fans have to look up twice. Built by Kenworth in the United States, it belongs to a rarer and more specific period in the company's history, when cabovers were still establishing themselves as a smart way to create more usable length in a truck and trailer combination. The CBE referred to the cabover engine idea, a layout made to reduce overall length and improve efficiency in heavy hauling. Engine choices could vary by order, but trucks in this family could use gasoline or diesel inline 6-cylinder engines, which were common in heavy trucks of the era. In stronger versions, power was generally somewhere between 150 and more than 250 horsepower, depending on the engine and application. Torque was focused on low-speed pulling power. A loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run could take more than a minute, and top speed usually stayed around 45 to 60 miles per hour. The transmission was manual, with short ratios and in many cases auxiliary gearboxes to help with hills and low-speed maneuvering under load. The most common drivetrain was 6x4, with leaf spring suspension built to handle weight and rough roads. Visually, the TCF-521 CBE had a personality all its own: old-school proportions, a strong front end, and a shape that clearly shows the transition from classic conventional cab trucks to more modern cabovers. It was used for heavy hauling, regional work, and specific jobs where its compact overall length was a real advantage. Because it was produced in limited numbers during a time when many trucks were built to order, finding information and preserved examples is not easy. That is exactly why it became a collector's rarity, especially for people who love truly old Kenworth machines. And if this model is already hard to find even in historical records, the #1 truck on this list is even rarer, more obscure, and tied to a nearly forgotten American truck builder. Corbitt D600. Taking the #1 spot is the Corbitt D600, an American cabover so rare that it feels like it belongs to a nearly forgotten corner of trucking history. Built by the Corbitt Company in the United States, it came from a manufacturer that started in the early 20th century and became known for rugged trucks, military vehicles, and heavy-duty machines built in much smaller numbers than the giants of the industry. That makes any preserved Corbitt special, but a D600 Cabover is on another level. The mechanical setup could vary quite a bit depending on the job, but Corbitt trucks of this class could use gasoline or diesel inline six-cylinder engines, with power generally in the range of 150 to more than 250 horsepower, depending on the year and the engine installed. Torque was built for hard work and low-speed pulling, with slow acceleration and top speeds usually around 45 to 55 miles per hour. A loaded 0 to 60 miles per hour run was hardly part of the conversation, because this truck was built to move weight, not to run fast. The transmission was manual, with short ratios, and in some applications, an auxiliary gearbox to multiply the gear choices. The most common layout in heavy trucks of this type was 6x4, with simple, tough leaf spring suspension made for rough service. The D600 had a very different presence from the better-known Cabovers. Forward cab, old lines, heavy-looking front end, high stance, and the feel of a truck that was almost built to order, with little concern for looking modern or pretty. The Corbitt D600 was used in heavy service, regional transport, industrial applications, and in some cases, special operations connected to the company's military and commercial background. Since Corbitt ended production decades ago and never had the volume of Kenworth, Peterbilt, or International, its trucks became extremely rare. Finding a D600 today is like finding a relic from a time when trucks were built with thick steel, simple mechanics, and real personality. That is why it closes this list as one of the rarest and most legendary old American cabovers of all time. These old American cabovers show a unique chapter in highway history, when a trucker rode high above the road, almost sitting on top of the engine, feeling the sound, the vibration, and the weight of the machine with every gear change. From the Kenworth K100E to the rare Corbitt D600, every truck on this list carry hard work, history, and personality. More than just old trucks, they are rolling memories of a time when steel, diesel, chrome, and real driving skill mattered more than any modern technology. Now tell me in the comments, which one of these cabovers did you already know? Which one do you think is the best looking or the rarest? And which one would you most like to see fully restored in person? If you enjoy this kind of content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell. It helps the channel grow, shows YouTube that this video is worth sharing, and helps this passion for old trucks reach more people. See you in the next video.